Ladies and gentlemen, when I say legalese, we have an official on staff, a man who 24/7, 365, when we need legal help, Dan Lust is there. Now we have to put him up because I want to see him, Robin, even though the hockey game is we're midway through the third period in a 2-2 contest. But what I want to see, the man himself, the greatness that is, Dan Lust, Esquire.
Well, you know he's high on the guest list pecking order if you're moving hockey off the TV.
You're damn right.
Yeah.
I want to see who I'm talking to, Harry. He's back in his leather-bound office with the background.
My mahogany office, actually.
Mahogany.
Yeah, mahogany.
You got the mahogany. You got to have a Scotch bottle or something. You know that little. You have to have like
a
silver,
decanter.
silver tray with a glass decanter and a couple of crystal glasses there.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what Perry Mason had.
Your apartment back here. I pull one of these books, and there's just a whole whiskey cabinet.
Oh,
right.
Beautiful, man! You push a button, and that whole thing opens up.
Right.
And then the TV comes up.
Exactly.
People are, is that a fake? No, Dan Lust was not coming out of WAP, the song WAP. Have you seen that song?
The video?
The video?
I have seen it making the rounds, but I am not coming out of it. I can report that confidently.
Exactly. Well, we played it last segment. We have Ben Shapiro narrating it. So that's a good transition from Ben Shapiro to Dan Lust. All right, Dan, one of the things that you've been talking about on Twitter, because people ask you legal questions, including Dean, who's asking about baseball cards. Our buddy Dean says, can you ask Dan about the baseball cards? Because I got a rookie card in a box, but now they're saying it's not eligible anymore. It's an autographed Aaron Judge, and they're telling me that it expired. We'll get to that later. But first I want to ask you about the college football kids, because there's a debate going on whether or not, as we've seen in pro sports, teams are giving athletes the right to opt out and not play. And we've seen it happen in football, baseball, NBA, hockey, professional sports. What's the deal with the college kids and whether they can opt out if their leagues play and they don't want to play?
So twofold. The NCAA Board of Governors gave us our guidance last week on August 5th, and they said to the extent the player opts out, he's not going to lose his scholarship. So that answers one of the questions. Now, there was a world that we had considered that if college football were to be canceled, that they could extend the eligibility of all those fall players. And that's what happened in the spring. Now, Tony, as of the last half an hour, everything's changing every minute. There's now a world where half of college football plays and the other half might play in the spring. So this world where eligibility could be extended becomes a lot messier all of a sudden. And that doesn't even talk about potential transfers from one school to another. So all of a sudden, it's kind of an apocalyptic world in the college football landscape.
Well, what is the biggest fear, in your view, of like the Big Ten and the Pac-12 of why they don't want to sort of just sort of stay the course like the SEC and the ACC are right now and include the Big 12. I mean, the SEC has even moved the date of the start of the season a few weeks later. Why the necessity to do it now and cancel things now?
So twofold. The first answer, I think, is just a medical one. It's a battle of the experts. We talked about this, Dr. Alan Sills in the NFL versus Tony Fauci. You can have your political views one way or the other, but these are two doctors at the top of their field who have a disagreement, and that's essentially what's going on in the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the MAC. Their doctors are saying going forward is too much of a liability exposure, whereas the ACC, Duke, top doctors there, SEC, their doctors don't feel that way. So that's kind of step one, why we have a different view. So now the second view of this, why there's kind of a sprouting up of all these cancellations all of a sudden, it's that same August 5th Board of Governors memo from the NCAA, which said COVID liability waivers would not be allowed. The schools could not force that on people. And now, Tony, you guys pay me the big bucks to be your attorney. So I know how this kind of financial fees work, right? By the way, disclaimer, you don't pay me a dime, just so everyone is watching. That's
this
out
is
there
pro Sonny Bono on this show. That's how we do it. Or Steve Bono, the former Norristown kid who was the third-string quarterback for the 49ers back in the glory days.
But the point is kind of clear here. A liability waiver, the difference between a waiver, if I sign a waiver, Tony, and I go to sue you, you would hold up that waiver and say, you know what? The lawsuit stops here. There's no depositions. There's no discovery. There's no trial. The case is over. Now, if you don't have a liability waiver, you could still win the case. You could get it kicked out once you go through the mechanisms of discovery. But, Tony, that costs money, that costs legal fees. And that's kind of the fear. If you don't have a liability waiver, you let these cases walk into the courtroom. And that's why these insurance premiums could go up. That's why there is an additional cost. So once the liability waivers were knocked out across the board, then, these financial departments had to say, wow, this is going to cost us a ton of legal, more than we expected, because liability waivers are a way to manage risk and manage the financial exposure. So that's why we're seeing this pop up in this past couple of days.
Dan Luss joining us, Tony Bruno, Harry Mays here, breaking it down, keeping it simple, which Dan does better than pretty much anybody. So now what about individual schools? For example, Scott Frost at Nebraska says, I want to play, and can they jump out of a conference and say, our kids want to play, our athletic director wants to play, we can then
schedule games
against some of these teams that are still playing?
I saw, Coach Day for Ohio State say they wanted to play no matter what when they asked him if he was going to go to the SEC. So that question is popping up all over the place. Now, on a first level, television contracts are your first hurdle because you're only supposed to be playing for your particular conference. So that might bound Nebraska, might hurt the Ohio State to some extent. But that being said, Tony, we're in a world where force majeure is being triggered across the board. It doesn't have to take a pandemic or an epidemic. It could take just a frustration of the season. So that's the type of language that might give a school like Ohio State or Nebraska an out to play games. Maybe it's not a full leaving of the Big Ten, but maybe it's just this particular year because it's an emergency situation. If you read Scott Frost's comments, he says we're playing no matter what. So you can read into that as much as you want. And then there's, separate reports from Dan Patrick. He's on your network. Patrick's saying that the SEC is trying to, I guess, recruit ACC schools, recruit Big 12 schools, and to try to play with them. So, I posted, I don't mean to be dramatic, but this could be the end of the NCAA as we know it. Just schools can just be picked out and go to different conferences, and players can all of a sudden kind of opt out and, go wherever else. So it's, I use the word apocalyptic, but it's just a world we've never seen before.
Well, that's what I was wondering the other day. I was wondering, is there real fear of the virus, or is there fear more so these teams and conferences breaking up and sort of giving more autonomy to the athletes and empowering them more than they've ever been? Where once it's out, once that toothpaste is out of the tube, you're never getting it back, kind of thing.
You can put the toothpaste back. My wife yells at me. I do it all the time. But I agree with you, Tony. I mean, and Tony and Harry. This is a virus that's going to cancel 1 year. And now I made the joke, and I was kind of tongue in cheek. But what was to stop college football from using a bubble, right? We talk about how great the bubble is. The college football makes enough money; they could afford a bubble for these Power 5 conferences. The reason that they're not using a bubble, just use common sense. You give these college football players special rights and privileges, all of a sudden they look like these revenue-generating entities, and then you run into some antitrust challenges and labor law challenges. So that's why you couldn't give the college football players a special bubble, and let alone Title IX issues, right? You'd have to have a women's basketball bubble and a women's softball bubble. But if the administrators really wanted to save college football, they could, but it would risk the entire amateurism model. That would be years and decades of profits coming to them. So I do think that was the bigger concern. And the blue check marks of Twitter reported that as well, that Power 5 ADs were saying that was more of the issue. It wasn't coronavirus, which, maybe we'll put a cap on that. We'll help figure this out in a year and a half, however long. But amateurism, that could go on much further than this virus could. So I do think that is the real concern at the end of the day.
The big problem, Harry's going to be concerned, is college bowl games during the holiday season, gambling opportunities, and all of these games that people only watch because they bet on them. What are we going to do then, Harry and Dan?
I mean, listen, I've been dabbling in Formula One. There's other ways to bet, guys.
Not during the holidays. Well, the election will be over. The college football season, whatever's left of it, will be over. And then all of those meaningless bowl games, that parade from Thanksgiving all the way through to New Year's Day.
Capital One Bowl week, Tony.
Exactly right, Harry. The famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Idaho's not even going to play.
Out.
They're completely out now, Idaho.
Well, I want to say this just because in a vacuum, this idea still works. I mean, I played it out. You have and I don't want to say it's out for all schools, because remember, guys, you still could have, right, if the SEC breaks off and they do their thing, I mean, the reason I'm saying this is it could be the end of the NCAA as we know it. If the SEC is going to go off and do their own thing, right? They're going to break off. They're going to want to have their own separate television deals. This wouldn't be the first time a big conference in college football has tried to organize separate television contracts, separate rights. This is the College Football Association back in the mid 80s. This has been done before, and it questioned the NCAA model. But this might be the triggering event to try to do it again. So I don't necessarily think that bowls are done, because we could have 3 Power 5 conferences that are playing games. And I think the Sun Belt Conference also is not out as well. So, it's a very scattered landscape, but just the way the country is kind of fragmented in, how they've been treating the coronavirus. The South, the Southeastern Conference wants to play, and that's kind of consistent with how that portion of the country has treated the virus. So I don't necessarily think all the bowls are done. I don't think we can put a fork in that yet.
Is there anything like the Big Ten could do to prohibit Nebraska or Iowa or both teams from leaving for a year, to just play games?
Yes, certainly. I mean, those are just standard, I guess, if you breach a contract, right, I need to see what the Big Ten contract looks like. But if you try to leave, right, you could just think in standard law, right? You can get an injunction from someone to leave, right? You could get potentially a version of a non-compete, right? You've signed a contract, these Big Ten deals, and that's because you have exclusive rights to the Nebraska games to the extent that you wanted it. So if Nebraska can just go out and do whatever they wanted, that would make that contract that much less valuable. So I would imagine that the Big Ten would enforce this. But, I mean, again, we're kind of dealing with these farce. The conferences are only as powerful as the schools they have in them, and the NCAA is only as powerful as they have control over the conferences. So I wouldn't be surprised at this point if there was a separate entity that was formed between these remaining schools, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12. As crazy as it sounds, that's this kind of world that we're looking into with literally fall football. And the Big Ten is going out there and saying is spring football. We've never had a world with this in college football. So I think we need to start reimagining the world of college sports.
Now, you mentioned that the big legal battle will be, and Tim Brando yesterday was all over it. He was ripping Mark Emmert. I mean, the guy who runs the NCAA has been invisible. I haven't heard him say anything. He may become persona non grata anymore. Could they dissolve the NCAA and as you mentioned, form some other type of organization that oversees this more than the NCAA, which has been corrupt and pretty much incompetent since day one?
So I wrote an article on this, a couple months back when Fair Pay to Play passed. I mean, there was talk then, Tony, of banning the California schools. So I just kind of wrote, if you ban the California schools, great. They'll create their version of California Colleges United, whatever it is, and have a separate entity. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. And who was banning them? The Ohio State AD, Wisconsin's AD, saying that California would have an unfair advantage. So now, we're just kind of drawing comparisons. That's what we can do as attorneys, to the extent that you can have fall sports, right? And ACC is going to be playing, the SEC is going to be playing. There's a conversation that those schools might be having an unfair advantage in terms of recruiting and whatnot. So I don't think it's so far-fetched to say that a separate entity could come of this. I mean, I'm not all the big believer in doomsday, but you have to think that this is something we've never seen in college before. And now 2 of the Power 5 conferences are not playing in the fall. So we really do have to reimagine what the college football landscape will look like.
Now, what could be the trickle-down effect to college basketball? Because we didn't even have the NCAA tournament last year. I can't imagine that not being around 2 straight years, but, it could, though, right?
I mean, so I think what I'm more concerned about, I think that we're going to have college basketball in some shape or form, but these conferences are a package deal. They're only going to sign up for the NCAA. It's kind of, they're going to be in the NCAA for everything or for nothing. And that was the conversation we had with Fair Pay to Play. California schools weren't just be banned in football. They were going to be banned in all sports from the NCAA. So you could have a college football, a college basketball March Madness with not all of the teams. Maybe you have, guys, we don't, Harry, maybe you bet on the NIT, but nobody bets on the NIT. We have separate college basketball tournaments that exist. That could be another world that we look at. We have an NCAA tournament and then a separate entity, be it the SEC or people that just don't agree with what the leadership is doing at the NCAA level. So again, this is all kind of just planning out. But as attorneys, we have to advise our clients of the worst case scenario of what could happen so we could plan for it. So I don't think we can take any of this stuff off the table at this stage.
So the point now is we know could the Big Ten Because
they
they waited
reverse
a day. Yeah, could they opt back in
Right.
like we saw some like
Nick Markakis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Atlanta Braves opted back in once they realized these other schools are going to do it, and you're going to miss reaping what the other teams are sowing.
I mean, I saw it was official, and then I confirmed. Then I posted, "Hey, it's official." And then I saw it was official today, and I said, "Now look, now it's official." And then I saw a report that some of the Big Ten schools are going to try to want to play. So all bets are off at this point. I think it's just the nature of Twitter. The news comes out so quickly. Until you hear it directly from the schools involved, that's one thing. I mean, I had someone drop in my DMs and say that Penn State emailed them that the season was canceled. That Penn State directly emailed them from season tickets. So that's, I guess, a version of hearing it straight from the horse's mouth in this technological day and age. Could the Big 12 or Big 10 be back on tomorrow? I mean, they've gone on and off like that quote from The Office, right? Like snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. The Big 10 is gone, and then it's back, and then it's gone, and it's back. So let's see what tomorrow brings in this crazy Twitterverse.
The last time I heard that is when my moil was circumcising me at birth. I remember it well. It was very painful, and I've never gotten over it.
Made a very deep impression
Yes,
on you.
you did. Thank you, Harry.
Scarred you for life. and by the way, I only bet the NIT when Temple's in it, which has been far too often the past
Exactly
10 or 12
right.
years.
Yeah.
I did call that you bet the NIT, though. I did have that.
Yeah.
That is, I know.
Dan Lust, well, Dan, it clears a lot up, but I don't think we've seen the end of these conferences going back and forth. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Pac-12, we knew they were going to bail immediately. The fact that they waited for the Big Ten to go just shows you what a wimpy conference they are. I mean, I lived out there. They had the worst television deal, the worst television process. I mean, it's been an absolute disaster. I mean, some of the schools are good. I'm not knocking all the programs, but I'm saying they brought in a guy from the Tennis Channel to run the Pac-12 network.
Yeah.
And that hasn't really done anything for them for the most part.
I'm not, there's no disagreement here. I don't think it's the end of this conversation of colleges canceling. I'm just curious to see what the SEC is going to do. They're almost like pulling, LeBron James with the Miami Heat. Take your talents to South Beach. Everybody's, Justin Fields, the quarterback with Ohio State. There's conversations that he's trying to make an exit from Ohio State. I just find it very interesting that coaches and the presidents of these schools could be on such a different wavelength. If you see a comment from Coach Harbaugh over at Michigan, he wants to play, but then all of a sudden the Big Ten is opting out, and per reports, it's a resounding vote. A 12-2 margin was the original report. So obviously some discord. And then I watched an interview today with Coach Orgeron over in the SEC. He's saying, we're planning to play and we're planning to win. So it's business as usual in the SEC. So I don't think we've ever seen a college football landscape as divided as we do today on August 11th.
And then he finished that interview with, "Go Tigers!"
Go Tigers. By the way, because there's a transfer portal in college basketball, can a college football quarterback, is the transfer portal still open right now for guys to say, hey, you know what, my team's not going to play, my conference is not going to play, I'm going to go somewhere else and play? Can that happen legally?
You could make a hardship privilege. You could try to get that, but I don't think this is what the hardship was meant to do, and I don't think it would set a good precedent for just players to just leave the Big Ten and exodus. I mean, you can make the argument for player empowerment that they should have that right, but guys, we're not in a world where unions exist. Players don't have that power. They're at the mercy of the NCAA, so I don't see that happening.
How about if they make a list of demands like some of the other schools did? We need this, and this, or we're not playing.
You know what's funny? Do you know who made the first list of demands? The Pac-12.
Yeah,
they're
right.
out. And the Big Ten made a list of demands, and they're out.
They're out.
I'm seeing a little bit of a trend here.
Exactly. That's what we do here. This show's deep. This is a deep thinker show. I mean, Harry Mays and I, we may goof off a lot, Dan, but we're deep thinkers. When at the end of the day,
when it's time to be serious, we can be serious.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Damn right. Well, Dan knows that. Why do you think he comes on here?
Exactly.
But Dan, always appreciate your time, man.
Thanks,
Thank you
Dan.
so much, sir. Don't you forget,
Always a
you
pleasure.
follow him.
Yeah.
And don't forget to say hello to my other buddy there who does the podcast with you, who doesn't get the love he deserves, man. Our friend from the Super Bowls every year.
On behalf of all Dans, Dan Wallach, and also
Dan
on behalf
Wallach.
of Dan Patrick, I will say hi to both of them.
No,
because
we
I'm
love
so
Dan
much-
Wallach. He
so
loves
friends
coming
with
on
Dan
with us
Patrick.
at the Super Bowl week when they're there, and you and Dan Wallach now do a podcast together. I don't know why all the love for Dan Patrick. He doesn't give me any love anymore, man. No, I'm just kidding. He's
Aren't
great.
you Dan Patrick Network? Am I crazy?
Yeah, we're on. It's not a network. We're on the channel, Sirius XM 211. It's the Dan
That's
Patrick
love.
channel.
Love for the fellow Dan.
Yeah, he could have me thrown off, but he wouldn't do that. Why would he do that? He knows who I am.
Right.
Don't slander Dan's, Tony. Okay, I'm
At
Dan
Sports
Lust.
Law Lust.
Dan Lust, Dan Wallach, and Dan Patrick. The
Right.
three Dans. Beautiful. Not Dan Marino. That would be the fourth on the Mount Rushmore. But Dan Marino's not a lawyer. Neither is Dan Patrick. So we had to do we need 4 Dans.
I'd go Dan Fouts.
No,
too.
not. I'm talking about lawyers. Mount Rushmore
oh.
of lawyers, sports attorneys. We have 2 Dans. We need 2 other ones, if you can think of
How
them.
about the Dan Band? Remember that?
Oh,
that-
they're
that-
great.
But
that's
they're
your-
not
love the Dan Band.
I
attorneys,
know,
Harry.
but they're your favorite
Harry,
band.
on,
Harry,
man.
you're not listening to
It's your-
directions here.
It's your favorite
You're not listening.
band.
Jesus.
Always a pleasure, guys. Listen,
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to come anytime. Hopefully, we have better news on the college front, but I'm happy to break it down one way or the other.
Thank you, Dan. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Lust, Sports Lust.